Welcome to Convicted Patriot. You know, this is your source, I hope, one of your main sources for unapologetic, common sense, conservative views. Today is January the 1st of 2026. It is a new year. What a beautiful thing. We have seen a lot of progress here lately in this last year, and I just hope that it keeps up. I hope that midterm shocks me, but we'll get into all that. You know, I want to go ahead and take a second, tell everybody, you know, I'm sorry that it has been a week, at least, since you've heard from me, but Christmas got really busy, as I'm sure it did for everyone, and it was very stressful for me. You know, I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas, though, and I hope you spent all the time in the world with your family that you could, or as much as you could, you know, maintain without losing your composure, which, you know, is what we all try to do. And this holiday was it was pretty smooth for me and my little family. We made it seem very doable, you know, but it was low-key very stressful. We had to make, 4 stops in a 2-day period and carry gifts to and from each location, out of our car, back into our car, and then get back home and then get them out of my car and then get them organized and in the house, and so much trash and so much wrapping paper. And of course, just how my life goes, you'll never guess who forgot to take the trash can to the end of the road this week because they assumed that the holiday schedule would switch it up. It didn't. Yeah. And then immediately the day after Christmas, I hired a buddy of mine who's doing extremely well, Tyler Borelli of Imported Designs, to redo both of my bathrooms immediately after Christmas, the day after Christmas, and also have a metal roof on the way. And that's another $11,000. And that's why it's good, I guess, to keep a bunch of friends that are felons in construction. You know, that's one perk to knowing a bunch of felons anyway. While I was gone and I was busy with my beautiful little family of mine over this wonderful, stress-free holiday, a lot of things have been going on, unfolding around the world and around in this country. Some satirical, you know, and some very worrying. And it's a blessing just, you know, mentally to get away from all of it. And I will say that this little home construction and Christmas shuffle has had me stressed out in its own way, but it's still so much better than wondering if, you know, a random terrorist attack is going to happen, take place by some brainwashed jihadi radicalist or some whack job liberal that is going to try to, you know, assassinate another personality on the right, or, you know, throw rocks or stones or shoot at federal officers, or whatever the case may be. They can't beat logic of common sense and cold hard facts. And so they just have to erase the existence of the other side. And if you keep repeating the same lines over and over and over, just bullshit lies with no pushback from the other side because you killed them, or you silenced them, you scared them into silence, you browbeat them into silence, then you can even start to believe your own narrative yourself, the one that you created yourself. Or at least I hope that that's the case, because the way these morons on the mainstream media have tanked their ratings and destroyed their credibility by looking us right in our eyes, smiling, and lying to our face, like they really believe the lies. And I hope they did, you know. I hope it wasn't just some big, propaganda intelligence-backed organization, you know, like one that really runs our media, like Operation Mockingbird. Maybe Operation Mockingbird never went anywhere, you know. But anyway, that's what I'm here for. So, you know, if this is your first time listening to me, then please just give me half an hour, if that. You know, I get off and on here quick, but just let me try to explain to you what's really going on in this world, especially the United States of America. I'm going to back it up with facts, and you can verify these facts yourself. You know, I myself am a very firm believer in the phrase trust but verify. And, you know, I'm just a regular guy. You know, I've been through a lot more than most people. And I hide nothing from my past. I am ashamed, but it has crafted me into who I am today. I'm a dad now. I'm a husband. You know, I bust my ass daily to pay the bills and provide for my family, just like everybody else. I'm nobody. You know, I'm just super informed on the things that I speak about. And I think that I could get you to understand, you know, why these things really matter today in this time period, especially if you are alive in this time period right now. You were built for this. You were born for this. This was your moment. You don't understand how detrimental of a spot we are in as a nation. If you were here now, it is because you were meant to be. And let me try to get that into your head. Like I said, a few minutes, you know, let me try to win you over. And this will all be factual as I know it. You know, I can promise you that. I am biased a little. I will tell you up front, I'm a conservative independent, and I'll at least tell you why I feel the way that I feel, and I'll back it up, Anyway, so Harry Enton from CNN, their self-proclaimed data guru, he was just on TV a few days back, and he had the latest numbers, the latest polling numbers concerning the midterms, and obviously the predictability of who's going to win this year. And at this point, both in 2006 and 2018, the Democrats were ahead by 7 points, right where they are today. And right now, they've only solidified 2 points. So, nothing is set in stone when it comes to midterms, and that's wild. And, while I would not at all be shocked if the GOP lost the House, and simply because history tells us this is surely what is going to happen. But it's also not out of the spectrum or beyond the scope of possibility of reality to think that this particular election, this particular midterms, could break the cycle, could break the mold of history, of the past. And we can see the lunatics on the left get exactly what they've earned, which is nothing. As a matter of fact, everything they have ever tried to do from scratch or to reform has, in general, it's crumbled. It's crumbled, and then the shards of the crumbles have been resold to the public, and they've smoked it up in their pipe dream addictions from their favorite liberal grifter. And at least I can understand women leaning left, because the principles on the left, they're ran off of emotions, and that's what the left absolutely loves to manipulate to gain traction on their agendas is emotions. And you men out there that lean left and get all mushy and wound up about some shit that was, intentionally displayed in a way to make you angry or sad or vengeful, what's happened to you? Do you need to get on some TRT treatment and remember what it feels like just to be a man again? And I'm not just saying this from like a blue collar point of view. I'm saying this from a realist point of view. At no time, at no time in any civilization or on any continent of any era has there ever been a civilization that has thrived or been built by weak emotional men, scared to actually get their hands dirty, scared to get involved. And I don't mean by, like spray painting Teslas or chunking rocks or glass or whatever at Border Patrol on ice. I mean by instilling in the youth that it's your responsibility to take care of. It's your responsibility to take care of your family in general. And you have an entire generation of soft men that were raised by men who were too scared to parent because they wanted to be politically correct and careful of their children's feelings when it was time to supply the discipline. It doesn't work that way, These weak men that raised more weak men are going to lead this country one day. Remember that, So anyway, Jasmine Crockett, she is recently, she's recently dropped an ad, and I honestly stand behind it 100%. Never thought I would ever say that, but basically what it is you got like this clip of a side view of her sitting all majestic and royal looking. And she's proudly staring off in the distance. And then on a loop in the background, you hear President Trump. And he's slinging slur after slur her way, bringing up the undeniable fact that she is absolutely a low IQ individual. And that it's a shame that she's now considered to be somewhat of a leader to the Democratic Party, how poorly that reflects on them. It's about a minute or so long, and it's chock full of things that our president has observed about this particular member of Congress. I wonder if Jasmine Crockett even knows, if she even realizes how goofy this has made her look. Like, you're proving nothing. I mean, if you find pride in insults that are coming from, hands down one of the most influential and powerful presidents of this country's history, and if your point is to make him seem immature, like over slurring insults, then I don't think you've been present and since he took this political stage 10 years ago. I mean, he joined Twitter. You remember that? Anyway, while we're on the topic of the president, he's recently been seeing both leaders on each side of the Russo-Ukrainian war. And ladies and gentlemen, just when we thought we would see an end to the start of potentially World War III, some bullshit happened again. And I mean, it's so dramatic with these two. they're back and forth. They're emotional, and I understand Russia's conquered what it's conquered and it doesn't want to give it back. I understand about Crimea. I get it all. I understand about the biolabs. I understand about Zelensky and the grifting and the Democratic Party sending all this money over there from taxpayer money. I remember Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, signing the bomb that he sent. I mean, it's just so much ridiculous bullshit that we've been wrapped up in. But this war was used as a distraction, and it was used as a grift. And Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. And here we are, still involved with it, giving them money. And anyway, bullshit's happened. Again, of course, for like the 100th time. Putin saying that Ukraine sent like a 91 attack drone fleet to his actual home. And they were intercepted, of course. And Russia said that they would change their negotiation stance, imagine that, because of this. And naturally, Ukraine, or Zelensky more so, is he's saying that he is shocked and confused. And this is clearly like a Russian staging a false flag, to politically change their attitude towards the negotiation terms. He's also actually just had a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, once again, of Israel. Don't get me started on that. But the basic gist I got from it was an attempt to browbeat the United States into a war with Iran, since the last time didn't get it kicked off. I just actually had someone close to me a few days ago tell me that they were listening to a lot of conservative podcasts on their vacation. They went on vacation. It was an 8-hour drive each way. And they're finally, I think, starting to see the issues that are going on in Israel, or at least in that region from Israel, that before they simply even refuse to consider. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a mass awakening, and it's going to force all the foreign influence agendas that are implemented by countries that own us simply with blackmail and bribery, Israel being issue number one. It's going to force it to the light. And in case you didn't know, speaking of Israel, DNA testing is actually illegal in Israel, because if people found out that the majority of the population that is actually in the borders of that country state, the population, they're not even Israeli, they're not Semitic. So therefore, the verse in Genesis, which a lot of people confuse through translations, has a lot to do with it too, about standing with the blood of Abraham and the seed of Israel, is what it actually says, and people conflate it with saying that you stand with Israel, which even if it did say that, it meant a man, which was also the bloodline of Abraham. But it's speaking of standing with the Semitic bloodline of Abraham. And if the people and the majority of the government aren't even Semites, then how are we supposed to just have the undying and unquestioning loyalty of the most powerful nation on the planet? How are we supposed to just give it to them? How? And how have we gotten to the point where they just say that, we support anything they do because Jesus said so? Well, let me tell you, I'm a Christian. I do believe in the sacrifice that was made for me through Jesus Christ on the cross via God. The same God of Abraham, the God Almighty, the one true God. And that book that I've read and always studied and was taught from basically birth, that book, it simply just, it doesn't match up. It doesn't match up with slaughtering 80,000 civilians because you were attacked by a fringe terror cell that happened to be their government. I mean, how many countries have tyrannical, heinous governments? And should we just wipe out those countries' entire populations to get rid of the bad guys? Because at the end of the day, if you kill them all, you kill the bad guys too, right? Got to be sure. And the Jesus that I speak to and have a relationship with is absolutely not the same Jesus that these so-called Christians support. They support this bullshit. It's almost like a cult-like behavior, and it makes an entire group of people so easily controllable. It's just, I don't know. Anyway, I feel like I'm always talking about Israel. So let me move on. The SAVE Act, the one that has been stalled out again on the Senate floor as the Democrats do what they do best. They suck. Yeah. And this is another example of why we need to just axe the filibuster. Because while we have the majority and we can actually hurry up and get as much as the MAGA agenda passed, or at least into place before midterms, we need to do that. It's something the Democrats have already made it clear that if they get the majority, they're doing that. They're getting rid of the filibuster. It's done. There will be no pushback. You can't stop what they vote for in majority. And instead of supporting the agenda, obviously they're going to be doing everything they can to slow it down entirely. Schumer has all but pissed on the SAVE Act bill, screaming repeatedly that the bill is a modern day Jim Crow and that it threatens the Democrats' political future. And well, no fucking duh, because the Democrats' entire game for the last forever has been to flood the country with illegal immigrants so we can give them basically everything they could ever need or want, possibly. And we're going to do it for free. And they'll in turn just vote for us because that's the agreement, right? And they opened the border for that very reason, along with, I'm sure, some here and there that were tied in with like drug cartels and human trafficking and all that shit. Not in Congress, of course, but the intelligence agencies for sure on the latter part, But being that the SAVE Act would actually make it mandatory for voter ID when you vote in the United States elections, it's kind of like a no-brainer, that most American citizens, we want that. Like damn near all of us. Otherwise, our votes aren't credible. They don't count. If you're cheating in the elections and you're bringing in people and they're voting, it's illegal. You're erasing the votes of real Americans whose voice are supposed to count with people who aren't even citizens. And I can't tell you one person that I've spoken to that is all for illegal immigration. Like just the process of freeloading that takes place off of hardworking Americans' backs that has nothing to do with racism, and probably not for the last time, is simply just because our system wasn't designed to work this way. And if this isn't fixed, and it's not fixed soon, we will continue to have a collapsing safety net program. All of them, skyrocketing crime, sexual offenses, because you got to remember the culture of the third world where they have child brides, this is normal to them. So it's just their culture, and most will go unaccounted for. Just like in the case of the former, DC police, the chief that was hiding criminal stats, making her officers write it off shootings as domestic violence. They would appear to be, declining, obviously, if that were the case, not doubling, which they actually were. And obviously, most of the sanctuary cities, most of them are full of illegal immigrants. It's kind of like a duh. And that means that a Democrat-ran city if it's a sanctuary city, because they're the only ones that have these insane ideologies, which would mean corruption in the least is normal and part of the normal programming, accepted and probably even encouraged so that you won't be as likely to blow the whistle. You're playing the game too. They got dirt on you, you got dirt on them. And if it's a Democrat city, then we know that the crimes are going to be underreported because, the last thing that they want is for the Trump administration to have, a informant, whistleblower, and people cry, people shout, and send in the National Guard. That would also mean ICE would be coming and Border Patrol would be coming, and that would mean they're going to lose the voters. And they can't have that. They can't have that. They have no support left from anyone. They're running out of victim classes, and that's as simple as it is. They need a victim class to nurture. That's how they move. That's how they operate. And basically, they bribed them for votes. They went from the blacks to the gays to the illegal gang banging wife beaters, transgenders, Venezuelan cartel boat runners. They're losing their influence, and it's because it's also obvious now. Blocking things like the SAVE Act will do that to you. The words literally came out of Schumer's mouth. They came out of his mouth that it would be bad for the Democrats' political future. They do it right in front of your face because in their mind, what are you going to do? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to speak up. It's time to speak out. Speak to your family. Speak to your friends. Speak to the ones that are brainwashed, especially, they're brainwashed by this Marxist liberal mindset. Make sure they know that we do not worship Trump. Is he a good president? And do we like him? Yeah, hell yeah. But when he drops the ball, we call him out every time. And we demand a change of course. And most of the time he delivers. He delivers with the movement's momentum. We are the momentum. Trump will come and go, but we'll still be here. We'll still be here fighting for our country and our values and our culture and for the future that at this rate we're not going to be able to watch our children chase their American dream. They will absolutely be screwed in 2028 if the MAGA movement can't come together and keep this push for the great American comeback on the right track. We have to. And we need all the help we can get. Because if we lose this country to the sick and unbelievable ideologies of the current left wing, then we may never get it back again. Look how much of a struggle it is after just 4 years. People, you just don't seem to realize that the Democratic Party has been sold out to the same exact people that want America to fail. Why do you think the Department of Education was created, if not to keep our children uneducated in the least? Fill their heads full of different perspectives outside of reality, make them think that they're gaining actual knowledge. They don't tell you the fact that the victors are the ones who write the history. They write their own history. The losers obviously aren't there to tell their side. You were then failed upwards into a success without a clue of how the world works, how to navigate the world and this thing called life. Because undeniably, knowledge is power. So they keep you stupid. They destroy your health care and lied to you about being able to keep the doctor of your choice. You can keep your doctor. You can keep your plan. They did that with the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and that is finally going away. And they're screaming for an extension. Yeah, they got to keep screwing you. They need an extension to keep fucking you over. They are infamous for having insane taxes and to fund policies and agendas that suck. And they do absolutely nothing at all. They do nothing at all for anyone, not in the entire country. Look at USAID and all the taxpayer money that went to overseas transgender surgeries, homosexual operas, things of that such. I mean, like, what in the absolute hell did that do for anyone? And a few examples, just like look at any city in the state of California. Look at their taxes compared to anywhere else in the United States. Look at Chicago's taxes under the Democratic moron mayor, Brandon Johnson, who is super low IQ also and has a 5% approval rating last time I checked. Some of their taxes just went up 200% in some parts of their city. Guess you'll never guess which parts those are, I don't get up here and just rant. Although that seems, to be the case. I rant about real things that really happen. And I give you real examples of things that I refer to when I explain my point of view. I'm not just telling you how I feel. I'm telling you what it is and how that makes me feel. That's what's wrong with the baby soft generation under me. If you want to see what would happen if the Marxists get a hold of the United States again and are able to somehow maintain it through massive cheating, such as like the 2020 election, look at Europe right now. It is insane, and it's broken economically, and they're just ran by like a politically correct government where feelings matter, and if you hurt someone online, you can go to jail. They provide euthanasia to anyone for basically any reason that they can think of, like, they're depressed or they can't pay their bills. There's not even a cap anymore. They actually allow it for minors in some cases, and they love gender surgeries for minors also. And unprecedented abortions. It's like since World War II, like many countries, they have ran as far away from God and into the arms of a secular government. And this is usually where the rot starts. And before you know it, cultures are poisoned. They're poisoned with it, and it's taught as doctrine to the youth. They then live by that information, being that's all that they've ever known. And those European countries have now been overtaken. And I'm not sure if they stand a chance of coming back anytime soon, outside of like Ireland, whose private militia group has pretty much put their current liberal government on notice, And from the current state of the left in the Americas, it's obviously that there are plenty of foot soldiers that are controlled by, once again, emotion and propaganda. But, the leaders they're running out of shots to call. It's getting scary. And when you have entire cities like Minnesota being sucked dry by billions of dollars in scams and local government is in on it, and when you have groups like Defund the Police, the one that was in Portland that recently just bailed out the man after several known counts of beating on his wife, and then he got out and went straight home to strangle her to death, when you have groups that somewhat even control the government's local, law enforcement arm, like the cops, like Antifa, let alone Man, there's just so many unhappy, devastated people on the left, and it seems like a key trait right now to be a liberal is to be miserable. If you let any conservative group get organized like that, they'll get labeled a terrorist organization and thrown in federal prison. And I suppose that's why Trump has recently labeled Antifa a terrorist organization to level the playing field. And it seems like it seems like the more we go down this path, the more we feel betrayed, though. Like we aren't getting what we were told we had coming, when in reality, we've had trillions of foreign investment. Just in quarter 1 and 2, it was around 155 billion, like solid done, with another 9.6 trillion that was promised or pledged by countries that are in the middle of obviously working out their current trade deals with the United States. Inflation has been sitting at like what 2.7% for the best part of the year, since Trump's taken office compared to Biden, where it shot up, it spiked at like 8%, and it was pretty much averaging at 5. And as of today, the first day in 2026, we are now sitting with the U.S. as the most secure country on the planet. It has the most secure border in the history of the country. Trump caved in, and within months, it was the most secure it had been since 1970. But now, a year into it, and we have the most locked down border that America has ever had. Respect has been reestablished in the Middle Eastern countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And as a matter of fact, I think that is also a first time that any Gulf leader has actually trusted or had a personal relationship with the President of the United States. And when it comes to countries that have natural resources like those two countries, they just want to make money like everyone else. They upgrade their civilization into a modern era. These relationships are detrimental, being that the United States make up over a third. The United States makes up over a third of the national trade percentage. For the first time in history of the country, Trump has actually reversed the national debt clock and shaved off over $2 trillion in 1 year. Spending cuts obviously did it, and energy revenues back once again to the Gulf countries with their synchronizing with the United States oil productions, manufacturers, and ramping up production at the same time at the wishes of Trump. That's what happened there. Unemployment hit the lowest record it's ever hit of 3.1, with Black and Hispanic unemployment at the lowest ever recorded. Energy independence was on steroids in 2025. The United States become the world's top energy exporter again. Gas prices even averaged under $2.60 for most of the year. 3 new countries were added to the Abraham Accords, and up until this point, 8 conflicts have been resolved, ended, whatever you want to say. Hopefully, the Russo-Ukrainian war will be the 9th, and the insane amount of death can stop. The stock market, it closed on the Dow over 50,000 for the first time ever reported. Over 3 million people with criminal records have been deported, which makes it obviously 2025 was the biggest law enforcement year ever, and Trump got the tax bill passed. That gave us the biggest tax cut extension in history, and the GDP growth has averaged over 4.8%, which is the highest since the 80s. We are currently looking for the hundreds of thousands of children that the Biden administration, more specifically Alejandro Mayorkas, allowed to be human trafficked into this country, and more than that, lied over and over on national TV every night telling us that the border was secure. And when the children's subject ever got brought up, he played stupid, repeatedly asking what children, and assuring the American people that it was nothing but a political smear. It turns out so far, we've actually found about 129,000 of those children, and that's according to DHS's Christy Noem. And the worst of American cities have felt the presence of the United States National Guard, and that has honestly been like a very smooth operation with wonderful results. And of course, there's been insane liberal violence, but that's the case with anything that's actually going to be beneficial to America. The left is now even defending the Somali scam artist, blaming white supremacy as the culprit for the microscope being put over the communities that, are doing all the scamming. because it couldn't possibly be the ridiculous amount of evidence and the billions of American taxpayer dollars being redirected into the pockets of people that have no integrity, nor work ethic, nor anything productive to provide the country that took them in, gave them everything on a silver platter for absolutely nothing in return but Democrat votes. And they turned, obviously, a blind eye to bullshit that they find themselves getting into. That's right. It's pretty much now a known thing that the governor of the state, Tim Walz, is neck deep in this shit. And as well as the local government, too. And the feds even caught wind of all these scams years ago, and nothing happened. It could possibly be like a quid pro quo, or it could be more contained. All I know is the fact that I see a pattern with a group of people that have a humiliatingly low average IQ. It's about 60. That's bad. And they inbreed on the regular. That's just a fact. Not being racist, not being mean. It's just true. And this pattern is spread all the way from Somalia to Sweden to the United States. The same old playbook, the same old scamming with bogus info and shell companies. And, they draw federal grants. And in the third world, when they can't even scam a safety net program or a government or whatever, they turn to robbing just humanitarian aid trucks. And when I see this pattern and I call it out, the last thing that makes me is racist. And yet somehow the Democrats have found themselves backing the complete and total wrong side. It's so embarrassing, that being said, that the new year is here. And when you look back at all the insane things that we just went through, and to think that these people are still on the same train of thought after they've been called out, they've been caught, proof is against them, they've been indicted, the proof has come out about so many lies that they had told. Like, what is going on, America? Wake up. But on the bright side, it is a new year. And when you couple that with the current mass awakening that's going on in this country and around the world, there is hope for a brighter future. And I hope that we can save our country and provide our bloodlines, mine and yours, of both political parties. If you're an American citizen, we can provide our bloodlines with a real chance at the American dream that has silently been pulled so far away from them. It's just a phrase with no meaning. And the midterms are this year. And if history does repeat itself once again, then you can guarantee that the GOP will be spending the rest of the administration's time in office in the courtroom. And it's going to be very slow and drudging. But once again, I'll get up with you guys later on this week. I've had a lot going on. Like I said, a lot of work left to do, and my Christmas break is almost over, and I haven't even had a break yet. But anyway, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of 2026. God bless you all, and God bless America.